All right, we got a lot of stuff to do, and I want to go no later than 11 o'clock. So let's get going. The file that I gave you, or the folder that I gave you, has got 4 different text files in it. If you look up on the screen here, it has this, which is the prologue for Program 2. It has this, which is the prologue for Program 3. This one, which is the prologue for Program 4A, and this one, which is the prologue for Program 4B. We're going to attempt to do all those and get them to work between now and 11. All right, and I've got to still write up your piece of paper. Yesterday I gave you out a copy of Program 1. You don't have to do anything with that. That's just used, so you've got a guide, so to speak. But I do want you to turn in 2, 3, and 4 that we're going to do today as a class. In addition, I'm going to ask that you do number 5 on your own. It's very similar to 4. So that'll let you do something from start to finish. Finally, I'm going to ask you to do number 6. Number 6 is a GUI that you can write in 10 lines, literally. I'm not going to make you do the debug exercises for this one. So again, I'll write you a note or an email that has all that stuff on it. So I'm going to start from the top just like you. I guess the difference is I do have working copies because I wrote all these. All right, so we're going to do first number 2 that's on page 537, this argument exception thing. All right, so that's what we're supposed to call it we're supposed to call it mortgage application. So all of these, we're going to do 4 of them. Every one's a console app. So please get into Visual Studio and start up a new application. Make sure it's a console app. Save it wherever you save your stuff, typically, wherever that happens to be. And the first one, again, will be called mortgage application. You should never put blank spaces in here, even though occasionally the system will let you get away with it. You should never put special characters in there. Probably told you this, but years ago, with the book that we used was a Gaddis book. If you don't know what a Gaddis book is, that's what you use for Java. But he asked you to create an app called Joe's Automotive, and probably half the class called it Joe's, Joe''S. Program worked fine until one day it decided not to, and people's programs just started breaking. All right, so don't ever put in special characters. All right, so we've got this now. All right, our namespace, mortgage application. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to use the same file that you have. So this is the folder if you unzipped it, and you'll notice that there's a text file there that's called mortgage application, and it's right here. So I'm going to copy that to the clipboard, and I'm going to throw it into my program. And as always at the top, I'm going to add my using static system.console. All right. So I've got that, and I now have my comment, and hopefully you're in the same situation as me. So let's take a look at the comment and see what it is we're supposed to be doing on this example. The first 2 examples, numbers 2 and 3, are not hard. What you have to do is you have to have a person enter their name. Okay? Then it's imagine you're working for one of these Credit Karma or one of these credit places. So next you have to enter in a credit score. Okay, the credit score must be between 300 or 800. So what we're saying is it's not possible for anyone to have a credit score less than 300. It's not possible for them to have a credit score of greater than 850. Does that make sense? So those are our limits, our domains, so to speak. If the credit score that you enter is between 650 and 800, they're accepted for a loan. If it's less than 650, they're denied the loan. Does that all make sense? And that's what we're saying right here. So in main, and I wrote it up so that I put it into an infinite loop. So it says there, continuously prompt the user for the applicant data, pass it to the method, then display a message indicating whether they're accepted, they're rejected, or they have an invalid score. So there's 3 possible outputs. All right? Brady was accepted. Colin was denied, or you put something out of range. So those are our 3 possibilities. Yes? No, this is the valid should be Oh, you're right, it's 850. Okay. Yeah, you're right. All right, if it says 850 here, you're right. It should say 850 there. I noticed I spelled valid as valus. So you can change those. You can change both those. Change this so it says, so this line looks like this in your comments. Not really a ton of stuff to type in here. All right. But taking it from the top, there will be two different methods in here. There'll be main, and then there'll be another method that we're going to write, okay, that's going to calculate whether they're accepted or not. So what I did was outside of main, I did my, as I oftentimes do, said create and initialize program constants. All right. And I made 3 of them here. Okay. So the first one was const int, I called it max high, and set that equal to 850. Const int min high, oh, I put in my semicolon, make that equal to 300. And const int, oh, what I did there, int, I just called it min ACC for the minimal accepted one, which was, is that what it said? Did it say 650? I want to make sure I'm using their numbers. Yeah, 650. So that's equal to 650. All right, always nice to put a little comment over here. So maximum credit score, minimum credit score, and minimum valid score. You can put whatever you want there, but you know, just so it's something where you understand what the heck we're talking about. Okay? Now, every client will have 2 values. They will each have a name, they will each have a credit score. So we're going to input that stuff. And after we input it, then we have to check the name. There really isn't anything to check for. We could check to make sure it wasn't blank. We're not even going to do that. We're just going to assume that if we ask them to put in a name, they'll put in something. All right? Even if they put in hello, or even if they put in a number, whatever. But what we're going to have to check is we're going to have to write a routine that's going to check to make sure, first, we put in a number, all right, or an integer for the credit score. Second, that the credit score is not less than 300, not greater than 850. Third, if it is an int and it's within that range, we have to say that we have to check to see if it's between 650 and 850, so we can accept them, or if it's between 200 and less than, or 300 and less than 650, so we can deny them. All right, so that's what we have to do in here. I guess I put in one more constant, but I put it in here. It doesn't matter. I just said const, and I made this a string, and I just called it stop value. And I set it equal to stop. So in other words, what I said is if the user wants to quit the program, they're going to enter stop. And I said here, Boolean stop flag. All right. Now, for some reason, something weird, something quirky is going on with my machine. So occasionally as I start typing, my display is going to get bigger or smaller, and I'm sorry that it does that. All right. What I've been told is at the end of the semester, what I should do is take basically every driver that I have on this machine, get rid of them, and reinstall them. I don't want to do that right now in case it leads to other problems. So I'm living with what I've got. All right. So I want to declare my instance variables. Remember what an instance variable is. That means that each time I create an object, they will have a client name. This is kind of redundant, but client's name. and each one will be accepted or not accepted. Now, I'm going to take for granted that as we're doing this, if you have questions, you're going to ask. Otherwise, this makes sense to you. All right? So the first thing I want to do, I'm going to keep moving this up a little bit as we go on, is I want to read in the client name. Now, what that should say, and this should, again, this should make sense to each and every one of you. That should say enter client name or stop to end. Right? Okay, so we're telling them if they want to end the program, we're telling them to type in the word stop. That's the good news. Okay? The bad news is, okay, it is possible that when they enter it, they're going to type in stop and it's not going to be in uppercase, or it's going to be in mixed case. So normally I would have said something like this here. Don't type it in yet, please. But I would have said client name equal read line. You've done this kind of thing before. Okay, that would be acceptable if I put the semicolon there. The problem is we want to make sure it's uppercase, correct? So all I have to do is put a dot to upper. Now that looks a little weird. That looks even weirder. But that looks a little weird. This, if you've never heard that before, it's referred to as chaining. So it's method dot method. And for example, if you use jQuery, you can do a lot of chaining like this, where you have something dot something dot something dot something. All right. So what it says is do the read line and then take the input of read line. Take the output of read line and use it as the input to upper. So if I type in Jeff in lowercase there, it's going to change it to Jeff in uppercase. So it doesn't matter what I put in for a user's name, it's going to uppercase the whole thing. That's okay because what I'm checking for here is just the word stop. All right? There's other ways that we could have done this. Again, for lack of better words, this is a lot of review for you. All right, so we've read in the client name. So, comment here, continue while client name not equal to stop. Okay? I'm going to go over all this in just a minute. So when we put a little code in, and then we will go over all of it. Max high, min high. All right, that's enough for a bit, and then we'll stop in just a second. So I'll let you key this in. There's a lot of ways this could be written. Yeah. Yes, you could have said, well, client name not equals stop. But I wanted to show you this because this is how you do it in Java. So I'm just trying to introduce a few other things in here. Okay. There's a lot of different ways that this could be done. So Brady just mentioned something, so I'm going to put a comment in here. You don't have to type this in, all right? But we could have also said right here, we could have said while client name not equal to stop. That would have also worked. So this line that you see in green is the same as this line. So why'd you do it the other way? As I mentioned, that's how you would do it in Java. And I just want you to see this, that there is an equals method that you can use. When you use the method, all right, what we're saying here is we're using a variable name. So it's just another way of doing it. Not to confuse you, but you're going to see all sorts of different ways to do the same thing. This is one way that this program could be written. By no means is it the only way. Okay? This should make sense too. If you look up on the screen, again, these are placeholders. So when we run this, this should say enter credit score between 300 and 850. Again, it's a good idea to use constants there. Over time, that very well might change. You say, well, it's not a long program. You never know. Over time, the program length may change. All right? Now, we told them what to do. Okay? We just told them what they should do. And ideally, in an ideal world, they would do it. But we have no guarantee. So I'm going to put a comment here that says validate inputted credit score. Again, I'm going to just keep moving this down. Notice what we've done in here with the try parse. We're just using readline. You can do that. Just another thing to show you, it's a shortcut. I try not to throw everything at you when you're first learning it. All right, so I just wanted to show you. We could have created a variable here and done it too. A lot of ways this could have been done. All right. So now, ideally, what we've done is we've read in the person's name and we've read in their credit score. But now we have to come in and we have to say, okay, were they accepted or not? We're assuming that this worked. Okay, we're assuming so far that this worked. But if we come through there and we write this like we've got it here, and we put in nothing or a non-numeric value or a non-int value, the program should blow up. So we still have to handle that. All right, so in our try, I'm going to put here call method to determine acceptability. We had that Boolean variable called accepted. All right. You should all know this by now, but I'm getting the squigglies because I haven't written the method yet. We're going to write the method in just a minute. Not a particularly long method, all right, about 10 or 12 lines, but we'll get to that in just a minute. All right. Do you see when you look here, when you start looking here, how, man, I'm getting a lot of curly braces. So again, if it's easier for you, then start coming in there and doing stuff like this. Right? If you say, no, that's worse, or that's too much green, or then don't do it. All right? I will just tell you that it's very easy to start going through here and having one too many or one too few left or right curly braces. You accidentally remove one, you put in another one, etc. All right? Now, I'm also getting this here because remember, if I put in a try, I have to either put in a catch or I have to put in a finally, or I can put in both, a catch and a finally. All right? So for right now, I'm just going to put in my catch. I still have some code to write, but I'm going to put in here catch. And what did it tell us we're supposed to be catching up here? It said this argument exception. And I'm not even going to put anything in there for right now. It's fine. I'll write that later. But notice that this now went away. Okay? Well, then there's a few things you have to check on. First of all, make sure with client score, make sure that you defined it up here. And make sure you defined it as an int up here. Right? Okay, so what this routine is going to do is it's going to check to make sure that we put in a valid input and that our input is within range. Does all that make sense? We want to make sure of that. Okay? We haven't written that yet, but we will write it. So we got our choice then. Well, let's see. Here's main. So there's the beginning of main, and there's the end of main. So we can write that right now. At least by writing this and putting in the beginning of it. All right, so if I come in here and say, whoops, sorry. Private bool static bool determine status int CS for client score. Again, if that bothers you, okay, we'll put in client score. Okay, now I'm getting this now because it says that it's returning a bool and I don't have any return in there. So for now, I'm just going to put in return true. Okay, so notice once I've done that, all of my squigglies are gone. Everybody see that? All right. I still have to write this. So it doesn't matter which one we do first, but I said there's about, I don't know, 10, 12 lines, something like that. Let's just write the routine. Bool. I'm going to assume I'm a mean banker. So I'm going to assume that everybody who applies for a loan is denied. Okay? I could be the reverse, and I could be a happy banker. And I could assume that everyone who applies for a loan is accepted. The reason I'm telling you that is when you write programs that are dealing with Booleans, typically at the top of your routine, you either assume it's false until proven true, or you assume it's true until proven false. You know, it's just like in this country, you're assumed innocent until proven guilty. Same kind of an idea. All right? I just, set this like I did right there. All right? And I really should have, let's see, do we have that? Yep, we've got our min ACC2. We're going to use that in here because that's the 650. All right, since I already defined it up above, I'm cool now. I can go. All right. So what do I want to do? I want to actually validate the credit score. So if why am I getting that? Oh, everybody see this? Please don't write max high twice. One of them should say max low. Hopefully you didn't do what I did because that was just dumb. All right. Now I'll give you a bunch of squigglies, but we'll get them fixed. I'm not worried about it. If it's less than max low, or still doesn't like this. Max low. Okay, max low, min low. Max high. Yeah, I know. I just gave really bad names. Max, that's the maximum high score. That's fine. Min low is fine. Min, low. We'll go back and look at all of it in just a minute. All right. If that's the case, I want to throw a new argument exception. How did I know to do that? Because that's what was in the specs. Okay? Now, I'm going to put a comment here, and I want you to understand this. Does that line of code right there, or that comment, make sense? Because it says here, if it was out of range, if it was less than 300, or if it was greater than 850, we're going to throw a new argument exception. So if we hit the else, it must be between 300 and 850. In other words, the score entered was valid. We still don't know if they're accepted or denied. That's what we're going to do next. But it's important that you realize now we've got a valid score. Okay? So simply, I don't know why I got another set of curly braces in there, but I do. All right, so if the client score, if it's greater than or equal to that, what do we call that, min ACC? That's the minimal acceptable score. All right, then accepted equal true. And there's only one more line of code to write in here. Return accepted. So I want to let you key that in, and then I want to go over that entire routine. So there's everything right there. We're going to do this one. We're going to take a break. We're going to do another one. We're going to take a break. Then we're going to do the last one. All right? Now, you might find this confusing. I didn't do it to confuse you, but if you look up on the top, notice up here, when we call this, we said accepted equal determined status client score, and accepted was this variable right here. Okay? But then down in the routine, I also created another variable that was called accepted. So I've got a local variable called accepted that I'm going to return to my other variable called accepted. If that's confusing, don't call them the same thing. But several of you have said, why don't you make, throughout the semester, why don't you name your formal parameters the same as your actual parameters, etc. Just to show you you can. So in English, this is a validation routine. You come in here, you've got a Boolean variable, which means it can be true or false. We're assuming it's false. They're not accepted for a loan. If the score they entered was less than 300 or greater than 850, we throw an exception because it's out of range. So if we get down here, it's within range. All right? So if the score that they entered was greater than or equal to 650, then it has to be between 650 and 800. It has to be, because we handle everything greater than 800 or less than 300 here. So if it's within range, accepted is true. Then we return accepted, which means it's either going to return this or the original. Does all that make sense? We could have said here, else, accepted equal false, and then we could have returned accepted. That's bloat code. There's no reason to write extra code right there. So why should you? All right, you should always look for ways to shortcut a little bit. It's going to run faster with the smaller amount of code that you have. All right? So the only thing that we've got left now, if you look here, if we go back, okay, we have to write the catch, what we want to do in the catch, but we also have to come in here and say, okay, we called accepted. What do we want to do with it? So we've got a little bit more code So I want you to go back into your main, because we're going to come back now and write this. All right? Hopefully that did not confuse you too much. If it did, sorry about that. All right. If accepted. You know by now, all of you, I've said this several times. Shortcut for if accepted equal true. By now, that should make sense to each and every one of you. All right? So if they're accepted, well, it's pretty simple. Okay, we want to basically do a right line in here, and we'll say, we'll just put the person's name. Is accepted. And that will be client name. Now that's pretty easy. And let's just, we'll keep it in the same, we'll keep it in the same vein. So if they're accepted, we'll write that. Else, we'll just say they're denied. Now that's pretty darn simple. Now we could have come in here and said so-and-so with a credit score of so-and-so is accepted, so-and-so with a credit score. So we could have written more than this. I just didn't feel the need to do that. Okay, I didn't feel the need to do it, but we could have. So this is our try block. So notice when we come in here, okay, when we come in, we're asking you to enter a name. While that name that you entered was not stop, we ask you to enter a credit score. Then we check to make sure it's an integer. If it's not an integer, all right, we're going to catch it right away, okay? But if, and then we have to check to see whether it's within range. Based on that, you're either going to be accepted or you're going to be denied. Well, if we do have an argument exception, right now we're doing nothing. That's kind of stupid. So we'll put a right line in here. And all we want to say for that is the name of the exception, which is AE.message. Oh, brother. All right, so that'll handle that. So if they're accepted, we're going to write this. If they're denied, we're going to write this. If we had an exception, we're just going to write an error message that says the exception. All right. Now I'm going to make my code pretty small on the screen, but I want to try to show you as much of this as I can. Okay. So like I said, it's going to look kind of little, but that's okay. Just I want to show you this. Even smaller. But you've got the code in front of you, so you can look at it. The reason I'm doing this is I just want to show you. Okay, we've told them to enter a credit score. All right, but notice up above here, because I didn't want to make it too small so you couldn't read it, that's where we ask you to enter your name. So enter your name, then your credit score. Boom, that's got all this stuff. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but we have to make sure we ask them to enter in another name so we can start the process again. Does that make sense to you? Again, I can show you that, but then I have to make this even smaller to show you all of that code. So in other words, we have to make it about that small so you can see everything. And I don't know about you, but I can't read that, and I'm close. Okay? We're almost finished. We've only got about 3 or 4 more lines to write. So after the catch, but before this curly brace, so after the catch, but before the curly brace, we have to put in 2 more lines of code. We have to ask you to enter a client name, and then we have to put it into uppercase. Okay? Now, if you look up on the screen here, I already wrote that, right? So I'm going to grab that here, and I'm going to copy it. I'm just going to paste that in down here. Now, ideally at least, everything is done. Okay? you're still copying stuff in, that's fine, but I want to run it. I want to see if I get any errors. I got one. Okay, so I'm missing a curly brace. I'm missing a something. Yep, I'm missing a curly brace. All right, hopefully that was where it was, and I fixed it. Let's see. All right, enter client name, Jeff. Let's just check all of them. 300. Oops. Well, I could make that a little better, but I'll fix that in a second. 300. Jeff is denied. That's what I should be, right? All right. Brady. 850. He's accepted. That looks good so far. All right. Amin. All right. Let's put in a number that's out of range. 200. Value does not fall within expected range. That's what we got. That's what we have writing right now from our exception. Okay? Okay. Colin. And I'm just going to leave it blank. Value does not fall within accepted range. That looks good. Okay? So I've checked something that's too high. I've checked, or let's do that. Bob. 999. That does not fall within range. Mary. Minus 222 does not fall within the expected range. So I took one that was too high, one that was too low, one that was within range that was denied, one that was in range that was accepted. I tried no input, and I tried non-numeric input. The only thing really to try yet is, and I don't know if it'll handle this or not, so let's put in here for the name, Jeff, and let's put in 89.5. Okay, and it still says not within range. So the program didn't break. How about if I type in stop? The program ends. The only thing that I didn't do that I should have done, if you look on the screen here, is when I ask you to enter your name, enter client name where this to end. Okay, that was fine. Enter, yeah, there. That should have had something like that. So let's play computer. I'm going to make this bigger, and we're going to take it from the top. All right? So we came in here, and we had our variables. We had our maximum credit score, our minimum credit score, and our minimum valid, acceptable credit score. So you can have a credit score between 300 and 850. That should make sense to each and every one of you. And all I did was I followed our requirements that were in the book. All right, so this is what you're going to hear over time is these two values right here. It's either going to be known as that's your range or that's your domain. A domain is the set of acceptable values. All right, so our acceptable values are 300 to 850. Probably I should have reversed this because, again, it's human nature to say, why didn't you put the smallest one first? Well, now I did. All right, so we've got that. That's outside of Maine. If the only place I'm going to use these is in one of my two routines, then I should have probably put these in that routine. Did you hear that? With these variables, with these constants, if I was only going to use one or two or all three of them only in one routine, then I should really put them in the routine and not outside of everything. It doesn't hurt to do this though. Okay? I have no global variables in this program. I have 3 global constants. So in main, what are we doing? Well, we've got this thing. And again, I could have taken this and put it up there with those. It would have been fine. So I've got this thing called stop value. It's my Boolean stop flag. Sometimes what you'll notice is instead of saying like stop value, people will put the word flag in there. Or the word is, like is valid. That'll be the name of a Boolean variable or a Boolean flag. All right? And I would tell you, if you want to do that, that's great. But then you're starting to establish your own programmatic standard. And once you do that, stick to it. If you're going to do something, always do it that way. I've had people where I've had programming jobs in the past, oh, Jeff wrote that code. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. That's my legacy, so to speak. And if nothing else, I was always told, boy, you put in a hell of a lot of comments. And I said, are you complaining? No, just the opposite. But you put in a hell of a lot of comments. All right? first job I was at, and I may have told you this, I asked about going in there and should I put in my comments? Oh no, we do that at the end of the cycle. We come back and we spend a week putting in comments. Total BS. So I learned if you're going to put in comments, put them in while they're fresh in your mind. Don't say I'm going to go back and do them later. You probably won't. All right. So here's our three instance variables. So each client has a name, they have a score, and they're either going to be accepted or they're going to be rejected. Accepted, denied, whatever you want to call it. So the first thing we're doing in here is we're reading in the client's name. So that should say enter client name or stop to end. Okay? Then we read it in. There's really no validation that we have to do there. We could check it to make sure it's not empty. We could check it to make sure it's alphabetic. There's things we could do. We weren't told to do any of those in our requirements. But that's the kind of thing that if you are creating an application for someone and you're not sure what they want, you should ask. All right? It's good news, bad news. Because if you say to somebody, hey, do you want this? And they're thinking, wow, I didn't think of that. Yeah, I want that. All right, they'll tell you they want it whether they did or not, typically. It's going to be more work for you, but you're doing it right from the get-go. All right? So that is going to read in the client's name. Then we have to check. As long as the client name that we entered wasn't stop, we want to process this record. Okay? So that's what we're doing inside of the while loop. So we come in here, we tell them to input their credit score. This is right there, that's just a write statement. That just says enter credit score between 300 and 850, correct? That's all that's doing. No processing there. That's just that. Now we come in and do our processing. We're attempting to take what we just put in to that string, and we're attempting to copy it to the client's score. All right? Well, now we have to check, because since we did that, we were told to check that using a try statement. So we come in here and we say, okay, you just put that in. So we're going to use our Boolean variable called accepted, and we're going to call our routine that's called determined status. And we pass it the score. Now think about this. This is review. This should all make sense to you. All right, I'll go for about 5 more minutes and we'll take a healthy break. But if you look on the screen here, accepted is a Boolean variable. So that means that determined status must return what? True or false? The actual parameter that we're passing into determined status is the client's score. That's all review, but that should all make sense to all of you. All right? So if it's accepted, we're just going to write accepted. If it's not accepted, we're going to write denied. Does that make sense? So let's take a quick look at the routine. Again, I use the same name for my formal parameter as my actual parameter. Then I created a local variable called accepted with the same name as the variable that's in the other routine. It's fine. So this is doing the validation. If the client score is less than 300 or it's greater than 850, we throw that new argument exception, which is going to print out our error message. All right? Otherwise, we know it was a valid score, so we check and we say, okay, if it was greater than or equal to 650 or whatever it was, then they're accepted. All right? If it's not, we aren't doing anything because we already set accepted to false at the top of our routine. So we should either be passing back true from right here when we return this, or false from right there. Does that all make sense? All right, and then finally, when we get back to the calling routine, after for our catch, we just write out the error message, but then we have to ask them to read in the next client name. And once we hit that line, we bounce right back up to the while loop, and we have to check whether or not what we entered was stop. That's the whole program. Questions? All right, it's 9:01. Let's come back. Let's make it about 9:12, please.